In the heart of the ancient realm, where the trees whispered secrets of the ages, lay the dark forest, a place shrouded in enigma and draped in a veil of fear. Body, a young man with a curious spirit and a heart too brave for his own good, found himself drawn to this forbidden expanse. The village elders had always warned against venturing into its depths, spinning tales of lost souls and malevolent spirits that preyed upon the unwary. But Bobby, fueled by a thirst for adventure and a skepticism for the supernatural, dismissed these stories as mere superstitions meant to keep the curious at bay. The intrigue surrounding the dark forest only deepened when a series of unexplained disappearances rocked the nearby village. The victims, all seemingly unrelated, shared one common thread. They were last seen wandering near the forest's edge. The local authorities were baffled, their investigations leading to dead ends and more questions than answers. It was against this backdrop of fear and uncertainty that Bobby decided to embark on his journey into the heart of the dark forest, determined to uncover its secrets and prove once and for all that there was a rational explanation behind the disappearances. Armed with little more than a backpack, a flashlight, and his unwavering resolve, Bobby stepped into the forest as dusk fell, the fading light casting long shadows that danced eerily between the ancient trees. The air was thick with mist, and a chilling silence enveloped him, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant hoot of an owl. As he ventured deeper, the path beneath his feet became less defined, swallowed by the dense underbrush and creeping vines that seemed to claw at him, urging him to turn back. Undeterred, Bobby pressed on, guided by the light of his flashlight and the compass he occasionally consulted. Hours passed, and the forest seemed to grow darker, the trees closing in around him like a living, breathing entity. It was then that Bobby realized he was no longer alone. Shadows flitted between the trees, just beyond the reach of his light, and he could feel the weight of unseen eyes watching him, tracking his every move. In the heart of the forest, Bobby stumbled upon an abandoned cabin, its existence unmarked on any map and seemingly forgotten by time. The door hung ajar, creaking softly in the wind. Driven by a mixture of curiosity and the need for shelter, he stepped inside, the air thick with the scent of decay. The cabin was Spartan, furnished with only the bare essentials: a table, a chair, and a fireplace that looked as though it hadn't seen a fire in years. On the table lay a journal, its pages yellowed with age. Bobby, drawn to it as if by some unseen force, began to read, and the tale it told was one of betrayal, revenge, and a curse that bound the souls of the victims to the forest. As Bobby delved deeper into the journal, the wind outside rose to a howl, and the cabin seemed to groan under the weight of some unseen force. The stories in the journal spoke of a feud between two families that had spiraled into a cycle of vengeance, culminating in a pact with a dark entity that called the forest home. In exchange for power, they had sacrificed their humanity, becoming guardians of the forest, doomed to protect its secrets and punish those who dared to uncover them. It was then that Bobby heard footsteps outside, slow and deliberate, circling the cabin. The realization dawned on him that the forest, with its twisted trees and hidden shadows, was not just a place of natural beauty, but a prison for the souls ensnared by the curse. He was not alone, and the dangers the elders had warned of were all too real. The stories he had dismissed as superstitions were truths he was now living, and he understood that the forest did not give up its secrets easily. As the night deepened, Bobby prepared to face whatever lay beyond the cabin door, the journal's tales echoing in his mind. He understood that the intrigue of the dark forest was not just a lure for the curious, but a trap for the unwary, and he was now caught in its grip. With dawn still hours away, Bobby braced himself for the longest night of his life, knowing that the truth of the dark forest was far more sinister and complex than he had ever imagined. As Bobby stepped out of the cabin, the forest seemed to hold its breath, the eerie silence a stark contrast to the chaos of thoughts swirling in his mind. The journal had offered a glimpse into the dark heart of the forest, but it was the forest itself, with its whispering trees and watchful shadows, that told the rest of the story. Bobby knew that to unravel the mystery of the disappearances and break the cycle of vengeance that ensnared the village, he would need to confront the guardians of the forest, the very entities that the journal spoke of with dread. Armed with nothing but his wits and the journal, Bobby ventured deeper into the forest, guided by an inexplicable sense that he was being drawn towards the heart of the curse. The forest around him seemed alive, with every rustle of the leaves and snap of a twig feeling like a warning to turn back. Yet with each step, the resolve within him hardened. He was no longer just a seeker of truth. He was a challenger of fate, determined to face whatever darkness lay ahead. The night wore on, and Bobby found himself standing before an ancient grove. The trees around it gnarled and twisted, their branches reaching out like the fingers of lost souls. In the center of the grove stood a stone altar, bathed in the ghostly light of the moon. It was here, the journal had revealed, that the pact had been sealed, and it was here that Bobby felt the pull strongest. As he approached the altar, the air grew colder, and a thick fog began to rise from the ground, enveloping him in a shroud of mist. Shapes moved within it, shadows of those who had been lost to the forest, their whispers filling the air with a mournful lament. Bobby could feel their pain, their longing for release from the curse that bound them. It was a weight that pressed down on him, threatening to crush his spirit. It was then that the guardians appeared, emerging from the fog as if conjured by the forest itself. They were not human, nor were they entirely of the natural world. They were the embodiment of the forest's wrath, twisted by the curse into beings of shadow and malice. Their eyes burned with an unholy light, and their voices were like the crackling of fire, speaking of pain, betrayal, and a thirst for vengeance that could never be quenched. Bobby stood his ground, the journal clutched tightly in his hands. He spoke, his voice clear and unwavering, of understanding and forgiveness, of breaking the cycle of hatred that had fed the curse. He spoke of the victims, those who had been lost to the forest's embrace, and of those who still lived, haunted by the fear of what lurked within the dark forest. The guardians listened, their presence oppressive, their silence a judgment upon his words. It was a moment that stretched into eternity, a test of wills between the human heart and the darkness that sought to engulf it. Then, as suddenly as they had appeared, the guardians faded back into the fog, their departure a silent concession to his plea. With dawn breaking, the fog lifted, and the forest seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The curse, though not broken, was abated, its grip loosened by Bobby's courage and compassion. The spirits of the lost were released, their whispers fading into the morning light, leaving behind a sense of peace that had long been absent from the dark forest. Bobby emerged from the forest as the sun rose, not as the skeptic who had entered, but as a guardian of a different sort. He had faced the darkness and emerged not just unscathed but enlightened, bearing the knowledge of the forest's secrets and the responsibility to ensure that the cycle of vengeance ended with him. The villagers listened in awe as Bobby recounted his journey, his tale a testament to the power of understanding and the strength of the human spirit. The dark forest would always remain a place of mystery and caution, but no longer one of fear and despair. Carl had moved to the village for a peaceful life, away from the chaos of the city. He was a writer by profession, seeking solitude and inspiration among nature's untouched beauty. However, the village was anything but peaceful. Beneath its serene surface lurked a labyrinth of intrigue, centered around the foreboding forest. The villagers spoke in hushed tones about the forest's cursed history, of how it was home to spirits and entities that preyed on the souls of the living. They told stories of a time when the forest was a battleground for witch trials, where innocent women were condemned, and their spirits were believed to haunt the woods. Carl, a skeptic, found these tales to be nothing more than superstitious nonsense. Yet, his curiosity was piqued. He saw the dark forest not as a place of danger, but as a challenge, a mystery to be unraveled. Carl decided he would venture into the forest, not to prove the villagers wrong, but to find the true story hidden within its shadows. As Carl prepared for his journey, he was warned by the village elder, a wise old woman named Agatha. "The forest is not what it seems," she said, her eyes reflecting a mix of fear and sadness. "It is a living, breathing entity, and it does not take kindly to intruders. Be wary, Carl, for you may find what you seek, but you may not like what you find." Ignoring the warnings, Carl set off at dawn. The forest greeted him with an eerie silence, its dense canopy blocking out the sun, casting everything in a perpetual twilight. As he ventured deeper, the path disappeared, and the trees seemed to close in around him, as if they were alive, watching, whispering secrets in a language lost to time. Carl's rational mind began to waver as he encountered phenomena that defied explanation. Shadows moved with no source, and the air was filled with the scent of decay. He stumbled upon a clearing, where an ancient oak stood, its trunk carved with symbols that seemed to glow with an ethereal light. It was here that Carl felt an overwhelming sense of dread, a feeling that he was not alone. He turned to leave, but the forest had other plans. The paths had changed, leading him in circles, drawing him deeper into its heart. Night fell, and with it, a thick fog rolled in, obscuring his vision. In the distance, he heard the sound of whispers, laughter, and cries of anguish, as if the forest was reliving its tortured past. As fear took hold, Carl realized he was part of a game, a pawn in a larger scheme. The intrigue of the village, the warnings of Agatha, and the history of the forest were interconnected, pieces of a puzzle that he was now a part of. He understood that the forest was alive, feeding on the fears and sins of those who dared to enter its domain. Carl spent the night huddled under the ancient oak, the carved symbols offering a cold comfort against the unseen horrors that prowled the dark forest. As dawn broke, the forest released its grip, allowing Carl to find his way back to the village. But he was not the same man who had entered. The forest had shown him its secrets, and in doing so, had taken a part of him. Returning to the village, Carl was met with a mixture of relief and suspicion. The villagers saw his safe return as both a miracle and a curse. Whispers spread quickly that Carl had made a pact with the spirits of the dark forest, that he was marked by the shadows. Carl tried to dismiss these rumors, but the seed of doubt had been planted, and his relationship with the villagers grew strained. Haunted by his experience, Carl's nights were filled with vivid nightmares, echoes of the voices and screams he had heard in the forest. His days were consumed by an obsession to understand what he had encountered. He pored over ancient texts and sought out Agatha, hoping to find answers. Agatha revealed to him the legend of the heart of the forest, an ancient entity believed to be the source of the forest's power and its curse. She spoke of a dark history, of sacrifices made to appease the entity, and of a pact that bound the village to the forest, a pact that was broken, leading to the current curse. Carl realized that his journey into the forest was no accident. The forest had chosen him, drawn him in to serve a purpose. He believed that if he could find the heart of the forest and understand the nature of the pact, he might be able to break the curse and free the village from its grip. Driven by this new purpose, Carl ventured into the forest once again, armed with knowledge and a determination to confront whatever lay in wait. The forest greeted him not as an intruder this time, but as an adversary, challenging him at every step, testing his resolve. As days turned into weeks, Carl's search became a battle of wills against the forest's malevolent forces. He encountered spirits trapped in eternal torment, remnants of those who had fallen victim to the forest's curse. Through these encounters, Carl learned of the sacrifices, the blood spilled in the name of forgotten gods, and the truth behind the pact. Finally, Carl stood before the heart of the forest, a vast, ancient tree, its roots spreading deep into the earth, pulsing with a dark energy. He realized then that the heart of the forest was not a guardian of the land, but a prison, containing an ancient evil that threatened to consume the world. Carl understood that the sacrifices and the pact had been a means to keep this evil at bay, but at the cost of innocent lives and the souls of the village. He was faced with a choice: to renew the pact and continue the cycle of sacrifice, or to find another way to seal the evil away. With his resolve hardened, Carl chose the latter. He used the knowledge he had gained, along with the symbols carved into the ancient oak, to perform a ritual that would seal the heart of the forest, trapping the evil within, but at a great cost. The ritual required a sacrifice, a willing soul to serve as the guardian of the seal. Understanding the weight of his decision, Carl offered himself as the sacrifice, seeing it as the only way to end the cycle of suffering and to protect the world from the darkness contained within the dark forest.